Hi there, I'm April Garwood from Banana Moon Studio. In this video, I'll be showing you how to work the waffle stitch, the crochet waffle stitch. So there are variations of this stitch, they're not all the same. This one probably resembles a waffle the most, but you can work similar stitch patterns slightly differently. Here's this one. And then here's how it looks on the other side. This waffle stitch that we tend to think of, here's how it looks on the back. Okay, so we're going to discuss how to work the waffle stitch. So the first thing about working in waffle stitch is you'll begin with a foundation chain. If you prefer using foundation crochet stitches, then you can do a beginning row of double crochet foundation stitches. I'm going to start with a chain. How many chains or foundation stitches you begin with just depends on your exact waffle stitch pattern. For this one, which I'm going to demonstrate for you, you will begin with multiples of 3 because each of these groups has 3 stitches in it. Multiples of 3 plus you'll need 2 more for your turning chain at the side. If you were working in this one, each of these groups has 3, but then there's 1 on either side, so it would be multiples of 4 plus 1 extra for this end plus 2 for your turning chains, which kind of depends on which version you're working with, but we're going to be demonstrating this one. So we want multiples of 3 plus 2 more. So I have 17 here. So we will start by working a row of double crochet. So I'll yarn over and I'm going to look at these back ridge loops of my chains. I'm going to skip the first 2 and go into the next one and double crochet across. I have my first row of double crochet complete. I'm going to turn my work so I'm ready to work back across it. And here's how we're going to begin. So we're starting with this one. We are going to make 3 standard double crochet stitches here. The next 3 are post stitches, and that's how we get this kind of different look to it, this ridge across the top. This is actually the tops of the first row of stitches. I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to start with a chain 2 turning chain here and make 3 standard double crochet stitches starting in the first stitch. That chain 2 turning chain I started with, that will not count as a stitch. So there's my standard 3. Now I'm going to make 3 front post double crochet stitches. So this is the next stitch that I need to work in. Instead of going into the top, I'm going to go around the post, going from the front to the back and back to the front again. And then I'll complete the double crochet stitch just as I normally would. I'm going to make 2 more of those. So there's 3 front post double crochet stitches. You can see how they look different than the standard ones. Now I need to make 3 more standard double crochet stitches. This is the next one I need to work into, so I'll go into the top of that. Standard double crochet stitches here. And then 3 more front post double crochet stitches, so going around the post of the stitch and then completing it as usual. I split my yarn there. Okay. That completes my 3 post stitches. Now I'll do 3 standard double crochet stitches to finish this row. That completes my second row. Here's how it looks when I turn it, so you can kind of see that the post stitches that I made look as though they're kind of sunken to the back of the fabric. So here's how the third row is going to go. These were standard stitches, so this time my first three are going to be post stitches. These three were post stitches. This time I'm going to work standard stitches there. So you alternate. I'll start with that chain 2 that's not a stitch. These were standard, so now I'm going to make them post stitches. These three were post stitches, so this time they will be standard stitches. And you'll do that all the way across. Now you're going to alternate. Where you had standard stitches before, this time they'll be post stitches. Where you had post stitches before, this time they'll be standard stitches. Here's how it looks at the end of row 3. And then when I turn, here's how it looks on this side. So now row 4, same story. Where I had standard stitches, I will now make post stitches. Where I had post stitches, I will now have standard stitches. So these 3 were posts. This time they'll be standard. And that is how you're going to continue working in this waffle stitch pattern. You're going to alternate between standard and post stitches. It just keeps going that way. So I'll show you at the end of each row how this is looking, but you already have kind of been shown the idea of how it works. Maybe you're wondering, how can you tell whether they are post stitches or not? So these were my post stitches, and you can see here how it's kind of like, it almost looks like these 2 rows are all one stitch. You can't see where the tops of these stitches are when you look at it from this direction. When I turn it to work this way, see how I have this ridge here? This is a real clear indication that these 3 stitches were post stitches, because when I make post stitches, it actually bends the top of the stitches below away from where I'm working. So when I worked these 3 post stitches this way, it actually bent the tops of these stitches away from where I was working. And so that's why it's created a ridge here. So that's a clear indication that these are post stitches. And then these, you can see the bottoms of them and how they're sitting in the tops of the stitches beneath. So those are the standard stitches. There is the end of row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the end of row 5, and looking at it from the other direction. So I hope you can see at this point that any waffle stitch variation will begin with a solid row of double crochet, and then you will do a row that establishes your pattern, where you're going to have sections of standard double crochet and sections of front post double crochet. And then when you work the next row, you're going to alternate those. Where you had a post stitch, you will make a standard stitch, and where you had a standard stitch, you will make a post stitch. So if you're wanting to work a different waffle stitch variation, this is the one we just did. To do this one, for instance, you'll set up your second row by alternating. Let's see, on the second row of this one, I would have started on this side. So on the second row of this one, I would have started by doing 1 standard double crochet, and then 3 post stitches, and then a standard double crochet, and then I would alternate 1 and 3. So 3 posts, 1 standard, 3 posts, 1 standard, 3 posts, and then 1 standard on the edge. And then on the next row, I would have swapped those. So this time it would be 1 post stitch and then 3 standards, and 1 post stitch and 3 standards, and so on. Okay, so that's how you make that variation. This one alternates groups of 2. So let's see. I'm not sure which way would have been my second row, but I would have then alternated groups of 2 standard, 2 posts, 2 standard, 2 posts, 2 standard, 2 posts, and so on. And then the trick to continuing from that point is just remembering that where you had a post stitch, in the next row you will make a standard stitch, and where you had a standard stitch on the next row you will make a post stitch. And that is how you work in waffle stitch.